Welcome and good morning. It's Energy Day, and I hope that the energy is still up after days of conferring and talking and meeting people and after lunchtime. We are here at the Mediterranean Pavilion to speak about North-South energy partnerships that could be done and designed in a way that it is sustainable and it has an option for green cooperation. The European Union is increasing its efforts in establishing energy partnerships due to, like, of course, we have the Paris Agreement, but now we have an interesting set of crises that makes the need of energy even higher. And in the same time, we also seek for fair partnerships and not only taking energy, but also finding ways to share technology, to build skills, and to build this future together. We have a whole set of interesting and complex legislation, and we need to apply this and we need to implement this. And today we would like to find out where are good entry points to establish successful energy partnerships. And as a good example of successful energy partnerships, we are very honored and lucky to have with us today for the keynote His Excellency Nizar Baraka, the Minister of Equipment and Water of the Kingdom of Morocco, for our keynote speech. And then after that, we will have our panel discussion, which is also an interesting high-level mix of private sector, associations, arena. We have with us Mrs. Borrero, the Director of the Energy Task Force at the DG Energy of the European Commission, sorry. And we have Bino Partan, the Head of Region of the International Renewable Energy Agency, ARENA. We have with us Leila El Hares, the CEO of Siemens Energy, as well as Mate Heiss, the Director of Global Affairs of Solar Power Europe. Before we go to the panel, dear Mr. Minister, the floor is yours for the keynote speech. Thank you for being with us.
First of all, I would like to thank you for the invitation, and I would like to say that I'm very happy to be here. As you know, yesterday we had the Water Day, and on this Water Day we talked a lot about water, but we talked also a lot about nexus between water and electricity and energy. And we consider that it's very important, if we are talking now about energy, it's very important also to not forget that it's very important to have both water, energy, and also food security. And on this point, I think that today I'm very glad to be here to represent our country, and I would like to say that we consider that this integration on energy on the Mediterranean is very important. Why is very important? Because, as you know, we are facing a real crisis, and with the climate change, the impact on energy is very high, and we've seen it this year. We had a very important drought, and this drought, for example, in Portugal, and they had, at the end, they reduce the hydroelectricity, represent 35% of their needs, and they had to use gas from Spain to have electricity. That means that the cooperation is the only way at the end to find solutions about what has happened. Second important thing also to know that we have to say that, as you know, climate change is a reality. We've seen it also this year because we have, first of all, the problem of drought, but also the temperature is very high, and I think that it was the highest. October was the highest during centuries in all the countries. In Morocco, the October was higher than between 2 and 3 degrees than the past. And it is the same also on France and other countries. That's why I think that on my proposal I would like to underline on 3 important points. First point, Morocco is very involved on this important challenge, who is the Green Deal with Europe. We just signed on October, we just signed very important agreement with Europe, and we are the first country have signed this agreement. And on this agreement, we focus on two important things. First of all, of course, to work together to face the climate change, and also to find solutions about what we have to do to reduce the impact of climate change, and also to develop all what is green. And second important thing is, that's why I would like to put that we have to work together for other countries, not only between Morocco and European Union, but we have to develop it for all the southern Mediterranean countries and all the North Mediterranean countries and all the European Union. And why not also at the end working also between the relation between European Union and Africa on this Green Deal. And if we want really to explain what Morocco is doing on this point, I would like also to say that in Sharm el-Sheikh, we also signed an important agreement with the setup of the renewable energy deal between Morocco, Spain, Italy, Portugal, Germany. And it was very important because at the end, our goal, we decided in 2016 in the COP22 in Marrakesh, and now we will set up this very important wheel, is really to develop a market on renewable energy in the region. And it's very, very important for the future. And we consider that thanks to this market, we can really share our production, but also we can export our production to European Union. We have also the opportunity, as you know, we are developing at the same time, of course, we can use new technologies, we can develop technologies together, and also we can develop research development on renewable energy in Morocco and in other countries of this deal. I would like also to talk about a third important thing, because I'm in charge of water. I would like to say that Morocco is also very involved on green desalination. We decide for all our big stations of desalination, we will use only renewable energy. It's a very important wheel, and we begin with Agadir, we begin with Dakhla. We will do the same in Casablanca. In Casablanca, with the most important station of the desalination is 300 million cubic meters a year. And we will do it thanks to renewable energy. It will be the same for the new station. We will have 6 new stations. And at the end, we will have around 1 billion cubic meters of water thanks to desalination and renewable energy. That's why I talked on the beginning about nexus between water and energy. And we consider that at the end, it's very important for us and for our country, our Mediterranean country. It's very important also to develop these markets on the Mediterranean countries for renewable energy. Talking about this market, it's also very important to say that we need interconnection between our countries. We would like to develop and to have the third interconnection between Morocco and Spain and France, and then we would like also to have another interconnection between Morocco and Portugal. But we consider we have an interconnection between Morocco and Algeria, but we would like to develop the interconnection until Egypt and all the country of the North African and Mediterranean country. It can be very important to Jordan and all the countries because it's the only way to really have a real market of renewable energy, and it's only way also to develop these new technologies and reduce the price of producing renewable energy, and it's the only way also to at the end to develop this new energy with the green hydrogen. Morocco is very involved on this project. We have lots of important projects with Germany, with France, with other European Union countries. We consider that it's the energy of the future, and it can. And to produce this energy, we need water, and we need solar energy or windy energy. That's why we consider that it's very important to have a real plan, a Euro-Mediterranean plan of green hydrogen for the future. And I think that we have really a good opportunity with the crisis we have to face, with what's happening now in Ukraine. We consider that the southern Mediterranean countries and Morocco, one of the most important countries on this list, we can be a real solution of the energy security of Europe, thanks to renewable and thanks to the green hydrogen. And thank you very much.
Thank you very much for being with us, and it's indeed an important point to underline the fact that it's not only energy. There's a lot of things connected with that, and water, of course, is one of the most important things also in the future. It's not only energy, the scarce resource. Thank you very much again, and I heard that you can't stay much longer with us, so you are excused when you leave the room, the others not. Oh, I'm joking. So to start off with and to explore a bit the opportunities of establishing energy partnerships in the Mediterranean, maybe as a general start, all of you are involved somehow in this. From your perspective and giving also a bit of your background, how can effective, or what do you see as key points to establish effective energy partnerships with a particular focus on the region? And we have to share microphones, so I will hand you over mine, and I suggest that Laila and Mate share the other one.
Thank you very much. First of all, on behalf of DG Energy in the European Union, and thank you very much for this very timely event, and in the best place, the COP. So thanks again from our side. In the European Union, we have a very long-standing trajectory on the cooperation between the European Union and the Southern African countries. And I think that when it comes to energy, we are more than ever obliged to enhance this cooperation. Both parts of the Mediterranean, we are facing exactly the same challenges. We need to have secure, sustainable, and affordable energy. And this is particularly challenging for the European Union. You all know that we are now tackling a very difficult situation with the unprovoked invasion of Ukraine. That, first of all, is a human tragedy. A war is always a human tragedy. But it has always shown the vulnerability that the European Union has when it comes to energy supplies, in particular on Russian gas. You all know that we imported traditionally 40% of all the gas that we consume in the European Union came from Russia. Now we are at 7.5 only. And we need to do a very good effort to replace this Russian gas for more, say, trustable partners, and also to accelerate the energy transition. And in these two areas, we see enormous room for maneuver with our partners in the South Mediterranean. We have important commercial cooperation with some countries when it comes to gas, like Algeria. And we are also working with them on how to produce gas in a more sustainable way. So we are all committed in this transition. So we know that gas is a transitional energy, but we plan to, in the European Union, to replace all the fossil fuels for more sustainable energies, and in particular for renewables by 2050. But very much related to that, and Minister, thank you very much for having signaled that. We have, through the European Union, signed very recently the Green Partenariat with Morocco. And here I think is the example that we want to follow with all the countries on how to further cooperate with renewables energies. So this is really essential for us. Fully agree that we need to cooperate more, not only from the administrative point of view, also business to business event, and the infrastructure. Of course, we need to focus on that. Tomorrow will be also an important day in the COP, because the European Union will sign a memorandum of understanding with Egypt on hydrogen, green hydrogen. The European Union have a very ambitious strategy on green hydrogen. By 2030, we plan to produce 10 million tons on green hydrogen, and we plan to import another 10 million tons. So this shows the extension of the dimension of the challenge we have in front of us. And this is, in particular, the point where we see the need for more cooperation. So I stop here because I have other member of the panel who needs to intervene. But I will summarize with, I think, because of the challenges we had to face, is now the time to enhance this cooperation. Thank you.
Shall I? Yeah. Thanks very much, and for inviting Irina to share some of our perspectives. We're very happy to have all member countries on both sides of the Mediterranean as our member states, and we work with both Europe as well as North Africa to enhance this energy transition. We also believe that a pathway to 1.5 degree to be in line with the temperature goals of the Paris Agreement is possible, primarily because renewables, increasingly solar and wind, have become the least cost option. So it's now a no-brainer to go for renewables, and that's happening because on a yearly basis, 80% of the power capacity additions are coming from renewables. What we need to do is accelerate the electrification of end-use sectors, starting with transport, buildings, and industry. And this is going to be a key trend of our times on both sides of the Mediterranean. European Union is taking a lot of leadership there, and more can happen in other parts of the world, including North Africa and beyond. And so electrification is key. And in terms of cooperation, as the minister alluded to, interconnections across regional infrastructure of gas and electricity are important. It does provide an opportunity to optimize resources, make sure that you do save on storage, etc. But there are financing challenges with regional interconnections. On the African continent, we are working with the African Union Commission to develop a continental master plan of a super grid for Africa, including the North African power pool. And this, we believe, will increase the competitiveness of electricity in the north of Africa. But also green hydrogen. Again, there's been a lot of interest and significant leadership from the European Union, increasingly from across the Atlantic, from the US as well. We also would like countries and regions to be a bit more cautious on the role of hydrogen. Definitely, hydrogen will play an important role, but it may not be the central piece of the energy transition. So energy transition, we believe, will be driven by electrification driven by renewable energy, but green hydrogen could play an important role in hard-to-abate sectors like industry, certain heavy industries, long-distance transportation like aviation or navigation. We also believe that green hydrogen may primarily have a domestic role, and we're very happy to see that Europe is considering a significant domestic production and domestic use of green hydrogen. And where there is going to be transport or export of green hydrogen, like gas markets today, we believe that green hydrogen or green ammonia markets are likely to be regional rather than global. The reason why we want to say this is we see that almost 135 countries today have hydrogen roadmaps, and a number of countries are net energy importers. So the whole thesis that a country which is a net energy importer without the right infrastructure to transport or export gases could emerge as a green hydrogen superpower needs to be thought through and before investments are made. So definitely green hydrogen will play a role. In our scenario, we believe that green hydrogen in 2050 could contribute about 10% of the global energy mix, or and again, hydrogen is an energy carrier rather than an energy source, so that should be kept in mind. So definitely it will be an important aspect. So in terms of the region cooperation, cooperation within the region, across the region, and physical infrastructure of gas and electricity grids are welcome. And we also have a collaborative framework which currently is chaired by Germany and UAE on green hydrogen. This is another space where member states can come together, form common strategies. And a final point on hydrogen is the whole role of standards and what is green, what is the guarantee of origin, and there needs to be a lot of harmonization on different colors of hydrogen and what is expected in export markets, etc. So there's a lot of opportunities for regional and international collaboration on hydrogen and other ways. And IRENA is a global leading energy transition agency consisting of about 185 member states. We are very happy to play that role of an agency supporting all our member countries on both sides of the Mediterranean on this energy transition. So thanks very much.
Hello, good afternoon. So yes, I'm very pleased to hear about the few announcements we had in the last week, and looking forward as well for tomorrow's announcement. So climate change is a result of more than a century of our lifestyle. And very unfortunately, Africa in particular is one of the continents that has been the most affected by climate change. We've all heard the news and the floods and so on. But some areas are expected, or the projection is to have global warming of more than 3 degrees in sub-region of the sub-Saharan region in Africa. Now, Africa also could play a leading role in solving the energy problem of Europe. And this is where wealthier countries should step in and find more financial model to support the energy transition in Africa. Africa is emitting or is contributing for about 3% of the emissions globally, while 10% of the wealthiest nations and people are contributing 40%. So I really think that we need to expand more on the different financial mechanism and financial flows into Africa. Now, if I talk about Egypt in specific, Egypt has very good potential to be a green energy hub. Its proximity to Europe and to Asia, being in the Middle East and the gateway to Africa, the abundance of solar, obviously, but also wind, like in Morocco, right, puts it at a very good position to also produce green hydrogen. We have also a very well-educated and increasingly well-educated workforce to actually deliver it all. And there's quite few projects in the pipeline. Some of them will be announced later today during the Energy Day. So I really think we should capitalize on this. Now, in terms of what needs to be done, few things really. It was mentioned earlier on. One is accelerate the renewables, and there's quite a lot of projects in the pipeline, but not enough. Two is actually improving the energy efficiency. Biden, in the last intervention on Friday, announced a $500 million investment in Egypt to decommission 5 gigawatts in country and put 10 gigawatt of decommission 5 gigawatt of gas-fired power plants and install 10 gigawatt of capacity for renewables. So this is really good. But also strengthen the electrical grid. And you mentioned a few times the interconnection projects. There's few interconnection projects we're also discussing between Egypt and Greece and Egypt and Italy. And this is really important going forward to export this energy. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. So, Mate Heiss, Solar Power Europe, and let me just say a few words about Solar Power Europe, which is the European Solar Industry Association. We represent the solar industry in Europe. We're based in Brussels. We work a lot with the European institutions, the European Commission in particular, and we have about 300 members covering the entire solar value chain, as well as national industry associations. And our main objective is to make sure that solar is the leading source of energy of the future. Now, obviously, we are very active on European files, including the Green Deal, the Repower EU package, but we are also very active on the international aspects of these files. So we work with the European Commission and provide input on behalf of the solar industry. And so the international pillar of the Green Deal, the Green Deal diplomacy, and the strategy on international energy engagement are very good initiatives from our point of view to engage with Europe's neighbors. We think that the existing energy partnerships and energy dialogues with countries like Algeria, for example, but also countries outside of the region, such as India, can be a very good tool to foster cooperation with these countries. And we, as Solar Power Europe, we are always very happy to be involved in these dialogues and partnerships. And we've been quite actively contributing in the last years and months. So, for example, our CEO accompanied the Energy Commissioner to Algeria last month. But we think that these partnerships could be even more successful if they were further institutionalized and further prioritized by the European Commission. And we actually do think, and I personally think, that the German energy partnerships are a good model for this. These energy partnerships are highly, let's say, institutionalized. They have secretariats, working groups, and there is an active effort made by the German government to involve the private industry. And we, the European solar industry, are ready to get involved, to provide input to these energy partnerships. Now, as Solar Power Europe, we don't only work on policy and policy files, but we also work a lot with partners in the partner countries. So most recently we've been quite actively working in Tunisia, Algeria, and Jordan from the region. That is the topic of today's session. And also with GIZ. So we've been providing capacity building trainings. We've cooperated with local associations, industry associations, on different policy files, best practice guidelines, etc. And I think that these types of cooperations are a really good example to foster partnerships, and we hope that these will be further fostered within the context of the European Green Deal diplomacy.
Thank you very much for pointing that out. And in the same time, it would be much more desirable to have one voice as Europe and not having partnerships with only some member states. Interesting points from this first taker, I would say. Particularly when it comes to hydrogen is maybe not the solution of everything, but it's rather energy carrier and could be used in green energy in big industry. Electrification is key, and also infrastructure for electrification. Mrs. Borriero, what are the next plans from the Commission on this? Any new projects you have in mind to establish partnerships, but maybe rather from the EU side, or are you rather facilitating bilateral partnerships between member states? I don't think so, but Just to throw it.
Thank you very much. First of all, allow me to comment on your comment. I think it's very good that the European Commission, sometimes representing member state, could go for some specific MOU or agreement, but also member states can obviously go for bilateral agreements. I think that all is complementary and all works very, very well together. So nothing is too much when it comes to cooperation on energy, and in particular on clean energy. Indeed, you mentioned what are the plans of the European Union, and the plans we are working already on that, particularly because this is not new. When we established the Green Deal, the European Green Deal, we settled a very significant international dimension. So we really want to work. This is Green Deal. In the European Union, we account for even less than 9% of overall greenhouse gas emissions. So we want to work with the whole world, and in particular with our neighbor, in order to achieve higher greenhouse gas emission. We have a very high target for 2030. It's a minus of 55. But we cannot do it in an isolated way, because we need to have the cooperation and the agreement with our neighborhood countries. When it comes to the South Mediterranean countries, there has been significant investment already in place. I think that the overall figures, it's 8.5 billion overall in all cooperation, but not only for energy, there is also cooperation on the environmental objectives, agriculture, so this is the migration as well, so this is the very big envelope. But we need now to work more on future infrastructure that will be needed to import green hydrogen from these countries. You're right, hydrogen is not a solution for all the gas that is used in the European Union and in other countries. Hydrogen will have very specific industrial uses and also agriculture. Just to give you an example, in the European Union energy mix, that our estimation for 2050 is that will account for around 10% of the whole energy mix. Our strength in the European Union will be electrification and will be renewables. For a very simple reason, there are other member states, there are other countries in the world who have gas, and they will have gas in their energy mix, for example, the United States, but they will go for some technologies as carbon capture and storage. We don't have gas in the European Union, so we need also to advance on this strategic autonomy, just to be more independent when it comes to gas, and lesson learned from the Russian dependency on that. So we go for electrification. This is our way to decarbonize our economy. By 2050, we plan to have 80% of electrification being more than 70% renewable energy. This is a big challenge, and that's also the reason why we need to produce our own electricity, but we need also to import electricity from our neighbor. We cannot do it from the countries that are placed very far, even if they have enormous uptake of renewables. We had to do it with our neighbor. So future investment will need to focus on infrastructure, and we need to focus also on how to attract private investment. This is very, very important, and I'm happy that Solar Wind Europe is here represented, because we need to find a way to use public investment to trigger private investment. I think this is the main duty of the administration, is to create the bridge, administrative bridge, and to create predictability to help business to business, to help private investment to achieve the clean energy objectives. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and indeed that's exactly the question I wanted to throw at you, Mate. From the private sector perspective, of course you can do public-private partnerships, there are other options. What, from your experience and what you hear from your members, are either bottlenecks or enablers to investment, be it in infrastructure, be it in concrete endeavors?
Thank you very much for the question, and thank you for the comments as well. And our thoughts are very much in line with what you are saying. Public-private partnerships are important, and public-private financing and leveraging private financing through public funds is a good approach. But we have some recommendations that we hope the European Commission is taking into account. And actually, I know that they are taking our recommendations into account. We submitted our ideas already several months, even a year ago. And I mean, obviously, one of the biggest bottlenecks is related to infrastructure and grid capacities in the Northern African, Southern Mediterranean region, which are, well, a big challenge and require a lot of money, and to some extent also a lot of public money, because otherwise, and you know, this is also an excuse that we see many policymakers in these countries are using as an argument against renewables, against higher shares of renewables. So, for example, yesterday I had a meeting with well, a government representative from a Northern African country, and this is exactly what he or she said. But I also remember that this is the exact same argument that has been said for 10 years at least. When I worked in Tunisia 10 years ago, it was the same discussion. So infrastructure is indeed one of the biggest bottlenecks. But at the same time, the, well, let's say, policy framework and the regulatory framework, in some cases, on paper it looks good, but in reality there are bankability issues, and also some of the macroeconomic issues make it hard for private investors to develop projects in these countries because of the creditworthiness of the off-taker in most of these countries. And so you know, guarantees and the European Union supporting guarantees and guarantee facilities in these countries would be very important and should be highly prioritized. Now, I know that in some countries, maybe this is more of an argument for sub-Saharan African countries, but sovereign guarantees are not an option because of the macroeconomic situation of the country. But in that case, for example, the EIB should step in to provide partial guarantees, and so we hope that, for example, the work on the European, the EFSD Plus and EGRE will advance and will provide a solution for investment in North Africa.
Interesting point, and I think that's an interesting question directly to you, Ms. El Harres. In Egypt, you already established Siemens Energy, of course, and could you share with us maybe what kind of partnerships did you establish for achieving that? Did you establish any partnerships, and did you find already the infrastructure ready, or did you have to contribute to that as well, or how did that work out?
Thank you. So, no, absolutely. So we have one of the, I think, a very good success story in Egypt for Siemens Energy, whereas we implemented a very good model for a private-public partnership. I want you to imagine about 10 years ago, the state of the country, where with the blackouts, okay, we didn't produce enough gas at that time as well. To a time now, 10 years later, where we are in a position to be exporter for energy in country. What happened was through a partnership with the Egyptian government, Ministry of Electricity, we have built 3 combined cycle power plants, each one the largest in the world, adding to the system about 14.4 gigawatt of electricity capacity. Providing electricity to over 40 million Egyptians locally. And all this was done in just over 2 years. Very challenging timeline we have worked with, but we also partner with local companies. This is viewed as an increasingly good success story in Egypt. We have other partnerships. Just to revert on that, a few months ago in August, we have increased our utilization factor of these power plants. These are highly efficient power plants, above the normal ones we have in Egypt. And just by optimizing the usage of power plants in the country and raising the capacity or the utilization factor of those particular power plants, we're able to, and for the first time, send out, save on domestic gas, being able to divert it to export, and have managed to fill in the whole cargo in the month of August in summer for export, bringing in direct investment, foreign currency in country at a time we really needed it. So another partnership we had is with the government is the formation of a joint venture together with the Ministry of Oil and Gas and the Ministry of Electricity for the a repair center for servicing our the rotating equipment. Of course, this will be servicing the equipments in our power plants, but also others in country. Another partnership we have is the formation of the Egyptian-German Technical Academy, and our objective is to train 4,000 technicians in the next 2 years through this center. So there's a lot of things that have happened, but also we're looking forward to many more things that will happen in the future. So we're in discussions on several projects, and hopefully we'll be able to share more soon.
Thank you very much. Interesting. And as far as understood, you have not only cooperations or partnerships with governmental organizations or governments, but also with companies that are on the ground that are working on different subjects. Like you partner with them on repairs, you partner with them on construction, and so on. Like just diversifying your partnerships, so to say.
Yeah, absolutely. We need to. No one can do it alone. We need to work. Everybody needs to work together. So we have an angle where we actually also recently, a couple of days ago, signed an MOU with the Ministry of Petroleum for capacity building of technical staff in the ministry throughout our different offices worldwide as well. So. There's few things that we're doing. We have done the power plants in the past. We are doing the O&M contract now on them, but also working together to form a JV for repairing the rotating equipment to service these power plants.
Interesting. Mr. Parthan, what do you recommend your members to ease investments in infrastructure or to, in general, make or support the investment climate, so to say, or find ways to have infrastructure development develop faster? So,
yeah, it's a most difficult question, and obviously, I think some key elements have been already highlighted. The role of private sector, and private sector. It's clear that the public sector cannot finance the energy transition. There needs to be partnership with the private sector, and as the private sector representatives did mention, there are certain challenges, and one is really to do with the risks of investment, and it needs a very stable policy framework. And what Europe is trying to do is a good example of creating a long-term policy framework within which investments can be made, and that is something which definitely needs to happen. Something which also needs to happen, and it's increasingly happening. I mean, there was this announcement of the JETME partnership with South Africa yesterday. There is a big issue around existing stranded fossil fuel assets, which are non-bankable. So there needs to be a way to finance the phase out of fossil fuels, and these are non-bankable. There are investments which are making loss on a daily basis, according to IRENA assessments. Probably 800 gigawatts of coal-based power plant today is not viable. They're just continuing to operate simply because there is no recourse to that. So, so there needs to be a mechanism to finance this phase out of coal and possibly other fossil fuel investments. When you consider these now for the power generation, it needs to be kept in mind the whole prospect of fossil-based power generation. So that's one thing to keep in mind. In terms of financing and in risk mitigation, IRENA last week launched the Energy Transition Accelerated Finance Platform. Not a lot of money, but at least 1 billion to start with, which will support energy transition-based NDC commitments that countries are making in their NDCs and LTS. But a key component there is the whole de-risking aspect. So we have a partner which is Swiss Re, and the whole idea, for example, we have partners like AIB, Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank. We also have the Inter-American Development Bank, etc. But one real issue they have is the political risk of renewable energy transition investments in the country. So what we are hoping to do is to working with Swiss Re, create a risk mitigation instrument, which could be tailored to each of those investments. So certain countries that we know of have really good renewable energy opportunity, probably reasonable infrastructure as well, but the risks actually outweigh all the opportunities. So if we can create some mechanisms, and 1 billion is not really enough for any level of energy transition, even in the smallest of countries, but hopefully we can create some examples of how to de-risk some of these energy transition investments in moderately risky and slightly higher risky countries, then we may have a way forward. But I think the whole aspect of policy certainty and the need for risk mitigation for specific investments in slightly riskier countries need to be somewhere where there needs to be a lot more focus on. And a final point is that there's a lot of emphasis on power generation from renewables and also green hydrogen. A major area which needs more investment is the enabling technologies. So these are the technologies which will integrate high shares of renewables in grids. So if you want to go to 60, 70, 80, 90% renewables, you need storage on behind the meter on the supply side, and there needs to be mechanisms to finance that, and there needs to be policy instruments to procure flexibility in grid systems, and that's something where more partnerships, more instruments work needs to be done. Here again, there are some thoughts, some examples that IRENA is working in Europe, in Latin America, which is relevant to the whole Mediterranean region. So here again, there is more work to be done. So we remain optimistic. There are challenges, but there are also solutions in different parts of the world. And I think with the leadership that Europe is showing, unfortunately as a result of a crisis, but it provides us an opportunity to transform, put ourselves very firmly on a path, accelerated path towards energy transition. Thank you.
Yeah, and we heard it already earlier, market development is one of the key entry points, and yeah, possible public investments in order to trigger private investments to start the stone rolling, so to say. We have some 15 minutes left only, but we have possibly questions in the auditorium. I see already one. Can we have the microphone? And if you can just briefly also state your name and your institution, and over here, please.
Thank you very much. This is Dr. Ahmed Houzayen. I am the manager of the Eco-Industrial Department in Chemonics, Egypt, and I'm an associate professor, University of Toronto and Cairo University in Energy Systems. I have two questions. One for Engineer Laila. I think what is, in your point of view, the structural changes we need to do in the business model of how we run the energy system in Egypt to enable better connection? So shifting to single buyer, pricing schemes, transparency, grid connection rules. What is your view on that if we need to capitalize on the investment? And the second question for IRENA is, of course, these guarantees can take us above the country rating. But what do you think the countries need to do to at least mitigate the risks they have related to smaller issues, to at least try to be reaching the country risk level quite fast? Thank you. Sorry, I just need to... First of all, I need to thank Siemens. All my students that went to your internship this year came with a lot of passion, confidence, knowledge, and hope. So thank you for complimenting what we can do at the university. I really feel the difference. Thank you.
Thank you. So thank you for your question. I think there's we came a long way, and there have been a lot of reform that have been done in the government in Egypt in the last few years. And it's all very positive. And I mean, as a result of that, we are seeing more and more investments in country. As I said, just a few years ago, 5 years ago, we were discussing potentially being a gas energy hub. And today it's reality, right? We are importing gas from Israel, and we're exporting it to Europe, okay? Our 2 LNG facilities are almost at full capacity. The one in Damietta is working at 100%, and we're sending more than 60 cargoes a year, and the one in the ELNG is at 60%. And there is more and more exploration. I'm talking about the energy domain. There's more and more exploration in country. Now we are discussing becoming green energy hub, and obviously there is a lot of reforms that needs to be done in that area, and the Minister of Electricity is personally working on that. And we're working together as well, because all these announcements that we will have, hopefully the framework agreements that will be signed later on today, will need to have associated rules and regulation that enable them, because a lot of these things haven't happened elsewhere yet. So yeah, I think we're heading towards the right direction, and it's something that we are all learning at the same time.
I have just one question coming to my mind, looking at the green transition, with asking you for a very short answer. Do you already calculate that in a way that at some point you are going away from gas into completely green?
We need gas. We need gas. We need gas, and we will need it for a very long time. So it's a transition energy source. But in the same time, we need to invest into renewables. So
I was just wondering if like grids are already constructed in a way that you can use both of like pipelines for hydrogen and electricity grids.
Absolutely. So there have been a law that has been. So we're discussing now, for example, putting together a pipeline to bring in more gas from Leviathan, from Israel to Egypt, and all the new. And there's the East Gas Mediterranean Forum that put together. Any new pipeline that will be built will need to be hydrogen ready. So the infrastructure that we're working on now, and few of the ones that we have in the past as well, are needing to support the energy transition going forward.
Okay, thank you. The question to you.
Yeah, I mean, country risk premiums is not relating to energy. It relates to the country. There are a number of factors, and it affects the whole of infrastructure investments. And there's limited space within the energy sector that you can do, but there are things which could be done. One is clearly the long-term policy and the commitment. What we have seen across the world, including in more mature markets like Europe, is the backtracking of policies. Infrastructure is a long-term game, and you need to have 20, 25 years of long-term commitment and policy. So what the EU has done, and also several other countries have done, is to set these long-term strategies and a commitment as to when you will reach net zero and when you will peak. And so that's certainty. And some countries have actually enshrined that in their legislation. So that is a very fundamental signal to give. The second is also, as we are seeing in other parts of the world, expectation that your energy transition will be financed by financiers outside your country is also something which needs to be looked at very carefully. So we would expect energy transition to be financed mostly by domestic financiers, and you leverage international finance. So if you do wait for energy transition to be financed by external sources, including international climate finance, you will wait a long time. So I think it's important is to make it very attractive for the private sector. When I say private sector, it doesn't mean large private corporations. A lot of the energy transition which happened in Europe, in Germany, were actually financed by individual households in some sense, indirectly. So there is a opportunity to create incentives at the retail level where, for example, if individual households and establishments, small establishments, invest in back-of-the-meter storage, it could drive the energy transition. So there are opportunities, but the key point in terms of investment is you can create the framework to make sure that investments are made primarily by domestic consumers and domestic investors, and then you leverage the international ones where you need it. then you may have an accelerated energy transition. Otherwise, you might end up waiting for a very, very long time, and it may or it may not happen.
Thank you very much. And I have with that a lot of other questions coming up. Unfortunately, we are already by the end of our time, and I promised to close by time, so we can't have another round of questions from the audience. So some key takeaways I take away is that market development is key to this, and that it will not work without reliable policy, both sides. And the European Union has already an interesting set of legislation ready, and we just need to find good ways to leverage that into investments on the other side of the Mediterranean, and to make sure that both sides have a good profit of it, that we develop skills, technology also in the south. Did I forget one key point? You may add, if you want, let's say 3 or 4 words or something very shortly to close this, if you want to add your takeaways.
Yes, thank you very much. I think that the takeaway is that, first of all, that we have to acknowledge that we have very common objectives, and I think this is the only way to go ahead when we know, and that, as I said in my previous intervention, that we need to enhance our cooperation to achieve this decarbonization path. Thank you.
We think that energy transition is happening. The challenge is to accelerate it so that we are within the limits which will prevent dangerous climate change. And here we all need to cooperate. And acceleration, if we get distracted by crises which happen, will not help. The developing countries have been in an energy crisis for the last 30, 40 years. So I think crisis and other situations do matter, but again, it's important to have policies, have that direction clear to accelerate that. And I believe a group of countries like G20 and the European Union, etc., have an opportunity to take leadership and look beyond the crisis. And I would believe that this is a time to show real leadership, accelerate domestic action, but also support international action. So it's really about the speed at which we do energy transition, and that could make or break the deals. Thank you.
Thank you. So I think collaboration here is key. It's very important that we work together. And a few days ago, we kicked off the Alliance for Decarbonization through IRENA. We had all the CEOs of the affiliated companies that joined us, and we had our first CEO roundtable. I think it's something else I really want to thank this COP, because I really saw a very strong appearance of the industries. So we had quite a strong participation of a lot of different industries in this COP. And I think this is very important, because through the industry, those projects will be realized. It's very important, so collaboration is key.
And so I think that, and we all know that the southern Mediterranean countries all have great potential when it comes to renewable energy, and from my point of view, solar energy in particular. And they also, all of them, they also have very ambitious targets. But unfortunately, they are, almost all of them, falling short on achieving these targets. So coming back to what Irina said, policy certainty and predictability and sticking to targets and transparency on, for example, upcoming auctions and sticking to those promises is very important from the industry's point of view. And I think that the partnerships announced today and in the last days, and the partnerships in the framework of the European Green Deal diplomacy are going to be very important to talk about this between Europe and the southern Mediterranean partners, and the solar industry is ready to be part of these discussions.
Thank you very much. So yeah, it is common goals, policy, collaboration, transparency, and agreements, and basically all of this accelerated. So let's make this work. Thank you very much for being with us today, and have a good afternoon, all of you. Thank you.